Hi, and welcome to Total Rewind, a Filmmakers Compass podcast where we discuss movies 30 years and older and see if they still hold up. I'm D-Man, joined by CP. CP, how are you doing today?
Good, man. This one's taking it back a little bit.
Well, it's an interesting film for us to talk about on Total Rewind. We're going to get into certain elements of the movie, but also this movie holds a very special place in the history of a very special company. And the movie is Disney's 1989 animated classic, The Little Mermaid.
Boom.
So we're diving into the Disney animated classics. And I'm excited because the role this movie plays in Disney's history is huge. And not only that, it's, kind of role in the hand-drawn animated pantheon of, the greats. The Little Mermaid's up there. So it's pretty interesting. Obviously, we both got a chance to rewatch it, even though this is a movie I think we both grew up with, correct?
I'm pretty sure any kid that was alive in the 90s grew up with this movie.
So really quick, on that note, kicking off Little Mermaid, do you consider it a quote unquote girls movie? Because obviously Ariel is a Disney princess. A lot of, girls have dressed up as Ariel for Halloween, and that's, they have Disney princess parties and all this different stuff. But I'm not gonna lie, I loved the Little Mermaid as a kid, and I really enjoyed rewatching it now.
I feel like that's kind of a weird question. As a kid, it never appealed to me in the way that movies like Aladdin or Mulan even, right?
Sure.
Did, where I just felt like there was more action than The Little Mermaid. I will tell you this, though. As a grown man, I have gone on dates with women and had the conversation, you could be anything other than what you are. And like, on one hand, I can count the number of women who told me that if they could be anything in the world, they would be a mermaid, which I don't know any men who've done that. So,
King Triton was pretty badass.
He's yoked.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And he's got the Triton. He's literally, I think he called it like his Mer Kingdom. Like he's ruling it down there. I don't know. It's one of those interesting things. I bring it up only because when Disney was actually producing the film, they were animating the film. Executive producer Jeffrey Katzenberg was worried that it would be, a girls' film, and that would actually affect the box office. But to me, The Little Mermaid, even though obviously the character endures, I think, in a more practical way with girls, the legacy of The Little Mermaid is, an animated classic. And I can't think of any of my friends who haven't seen it who are guys. Like, everybody saw The Little Mermaid.
No, I think you're right.
So I don't know. I actually, when I think of it, it's been a bit since I've watched the entire movie, in its entirety, I guess, but I think of a lot of the times the songs, the Broadway style of musical that The Little Mermaid is. I think of the characters, Flounder, Sebastian, King Triton, obviously Ariel, Ursula. They're very memorable. They're well animated. And they really, it's hard not to forget them in a somewhat kind of like simplistic fairy tale story they got going on here.
Yeah.
They literally do go for true love's kiss at sunset on the third day. And if you don't, your soul is mine. It almost goes back to Snow White, given the apple, or wait, is that Snow White or that's Snow White, right?
Snow White has the apple and she falls asleep.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Because then I was like Sleeping Beauty, but I got to rewatch some.
Also falls asleep.
Yeah. Well, anyway, point is, I don't know. I want to throw it over to you. Can you give us a little history on where the Little Mermaid actually comes from? Because while it is almost always associated with this iteration and Disney, that is not the case.
No, it's based on the Hans Christian Andersen story by the same name, which was almost 160 years before the movie. Walt Disney actually considered adapting it into an animated film early on during his time when, he made all the original Disney classics, wasn't able to. So they came back to it, almost 30 years later. And that's what we got in 89.
It does have that vibe of kind of the early Disney classics. Like,
yeah, you could see it.
Yeah. Like it has that quality. And I think it's, I don't know, it's interesting because when I looked, I was doing a little research on like the Hans Christian Andersen story. It was a little bit darker.
Well, I mean, I think we need to address the fact that as far as a G-rated kids movie, this movie is actually very dark in its own right. I mean,
it does have
right. Like the 30-second version of it is a teenage girl gets mad at her dad. She sells her soul to a witch. I'm like, right there, like that's a really dark movie. But you're right. It is weird that the Hans Christian Andersen one is even darker in many ways. I think there's a part in the film where in the story where she has the ability to turn back into a mermaid if she stabs Eric in his sleep and the blood drips on her feet. I was like, oh, that's a dark book, dude.
Well, and the way it ends, which I guess has been controversial since the story was, originally published. But I guess in the Hans Christian Andersen one, she in fact does die.
She dies.
And there's, I guess the author himself claimed that there shouldn't have been any religious undertones, but that was applied and people thought that they had, I don't know if it was gone to heaven, but at least, there was some religious aspect to the ending. And it's controversial to this day. And apparently, I don't know, Disney didn't want that. They wanted the rainbow happy ending.
Where they're both married on the marriage cruise or whatever it is. Wedding ship. Yeah.
They totally got it. So, I don't know. It's interesting, though, because not only is Disney reinvigorating some of the Hans Christian Andersen stories here, and I think the other major thing they do is bring back that kind of Broadway musical style to animated features. And that's a major credit to, I think, Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, who I read were responsible for the musical numbers in this picture. And it is worth noting that this movie did win an Oscar for Under the Sea, which is, I mean, come on, is it not the best song in the movie?
Oh, it's great. However, Kiss the Girl is a pretty good song too.
I like Part of Your World. I mean, they're all good. I mean, dude, we know the songs,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You've been singing them forever.
But nothing hits quite like Under the Sea. Like when the instruments come in and it crescendos and the way it's animated with all the undersea life contributing their part to the song. What an amazing animated kind of Broadway song. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's great. Which is something which obviously this movie is famous for kicking off kind of the successful revival of Disney animation, what's now considered the Disney Renaissance. And
famous.
It's one of the major features kind of in all of those films during that 11-year span of successful animated movies.
I think it ran something like this. The big four were The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King. But I think the Disney Renaissance included films like Rescuers Down Under, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, A Nightmare Before Christmas, and I think technically Toy Story.
I thought it went all the way to like the Tarzan movie and Mulan and stuff.
Yeah, I think technically it actually ended at, I think, Tarzan. So that included Pocahontas, Mulan. But if you actually look at all the films I just named, that's like a big chunk of our 90s kid childhood.
Oh, no, you're totally right, dude.
I saw a bunch of those movies in theaters.
Yeah, I did too.
And I don't know, I look at it now, it's funny because if I go back and watch The Little Mermaid, if I go back and watch Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, or The Lion King, I still know the songs, particularly to The Lion King, which I think to this day is still like the largest, like quote unquote, hand-drawn animated film of all time.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
And I think you mentioned it at the top of the podcast that when Little Mermaid came out, each movie got bigger. Yeah. And they made more money, which is like freaking crazy. Especially when you think at that time, as popular as Disney animated classics were. And at this point, we have Disneyland and Disney World and the characters and everything live on in the parks. To think that they were some of the biggest movies of the 90s. Like, that's pretty wild. Lion King's got to be up there.
Oh, absolutely. And right, like Disney was at a very, kind of the opposite position they are now, right? There is a lot of things going wrong in Disney. They were in huge financial trouble. They had a number of films which underperformed, especially on the animation side. So
yeah, like what were they? Like
the Black Cauldron.
Yeah. Some of those ones. I think they even did Sword in the Stone, like late 70s, something like that. It did okay, but not these type of numbers. It wasn't, such a huge hit. And I think honestly it's weird, but if you go to the theme parks, that's often slightly reflected. You see the parades and different stuff, like who are the characters?
No, you're right.
Yeah. These ones, not those guys. I don't see anybody in the parade from the Black Cauldron that I recognize. Did you ever see the Black Cauldron?
No, never did.
I did once. It was really creepy.
Maybe we'll have to talk about it on this podcast.
Yeah, it was interesting, especially when you think of it as a Disney film. That's, I think, what's more shocking. But I did want to bring up something, which I don't know if you knew this, but when I was doing research for this film, of course, I was clicking through not only Little Mermaid and Hans Christian Andersen, but Disney and the Disney Renaissance. I guess in the 80s, Disney as a company, the animation department, I guess they were considering just axing the animation department, which is wild. Because Disney animation is like, one of the most magical elements of the company, but whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this. I know we've both heard of blackmail, but apparently Disney was in financial trouble and some investor came in and he like bought up all their stock, and it's called Greenmail. So he got some sort of controlling stake in the company. But he didn't want anything to do with Disney. He just wanted them to pay him out. So he'd just go away. And I guess Greenmail is like, like you do that and then just walk away. And you made whatever, $10 million, because they don't want you on the board or in any sort of power position.
Huh. Interesting.
So, but I guess it saved Disney in a way, because it brought in, I think is Michael Eisner.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is, I think there's actually like a documentary about this on Disney Plus. So if anybody listening is interested, you can get this like in detail. It's fascinating. I think it's called like Waking Sleeping Beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, but it was fascinating to me reading about it and everything, because I guess he came in and they were like, hey, I mean, the one thing that makes Disney different than every other film studio is the animation department.
Yeah.
Like, not only does Disney have the classics and the clout to be in this business, but they actually have the resources and the department to bring this to life, with green lights.
Yeah.
We just need the projects. And I guess, the first ones were, I think it was like The Great Mouse Detective and The Little Mermaid.
Huh. Okay.
And that's how that all started.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but another significance about this film is this is the last 100% truly hand-drawn animated film from Disney.
Which, rewatching it is wild. When you think about the bubbles and when they're underwater, how everything kind of flows and ebbs and flows, like, if it was underwater.
Yeah.
I mean, to animate all of that must have been insane. Because yes, I think you're correct that after this, they started introducing elements of, I believe they called it caps, but really it was Pixar. And they started using it to actually, they had the computers doing some of the heavy lifting when it came to the animation.
Interesting.
So, which actually is fascinating. Like, I mean, it blows my mind. Like, where I'm sure there's a documentary out there too where you can watch like the origin of Pixar and how it's all related to Star Wars. Got to get our Star Wars reference in. And it's like how all of these things are like interconnected. It's incredible. But yeah, like I think this was the last one that kind of uses that entire old school hand drawn format. And I don't even honestly, I would love to see how, like, if they did a documentary just on the animation of The Little Mermaid, because I thought it was so well done. I mean, obviously, anytime something's hand drawn, there may be some oddities here and there where it looks, but think about the scene where the storm rolls in and the ship catches fire.
Yeah.
Or even the end, like the battle sequence when Ursula rises. You think about the ability, they're animating like scope and scale, and it was incredible. I thought it looked fantastic.
No, you're right. It's amazing. And when you think about it through that lens, that it's still done the old way, you can't but help but have more appreciation for it.
So, yeah, I mean, I think if we're just taking a look right now, I think, at Disney and the Little Mermaid's place and kind of this overall legacy, I think it's a huge pivotal moment for the company and for animation because it kept that kind of high quality fairy tale tradition alive and was quite cool.
Absolutely.
So, and I mean, I think the movie itself, like when you dive into some, they do, they have quite a few things to do with like maritime and, nautical elements. They have, a shark chase in a sunken ship and
a hurricane.
They have a hurricane. They have like, guys on the deck of a ship singing a song, which, there's no beer or rum, but I'm sure it was there somewhere,
Yeah.
Very Pirates of the Caribbean-esque, like, they made sure to have, a ton of the underwater type creatures and all this different stuff. I thought it was a lot of fun. Some of the things that really stand out, that I forgot about, like the scene with Sebastian and the cook guy with the knife.
Oh yeah. That used to be my favorite scene when I was a kid.
That totally, I don't know why, but until I watched it, I was like, shoot, I haven't thought about that in forever. And then like when he shows up at the end at the wedding scene and he like sees him again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loved it. One of the things too, like King Triton, I don't know if you got this, but like part of me was like, you're really pushing Ariel away. Like he asked Sebastian at one point, he's like, was I too hard on her? And I'm sitting there on my bed watching it. And I was like, yeah, I think so.
Well, especially that part where he goes in and he's like, and he just like destroys all her like human stuff, her human collection.
Yeah, it's almost like
gizmos.
Yeah, galore. It's one of those things like to me, I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, and do you think like your daughter's gonna be like, thanks, Dad, for teaching me such a valuable lesson, for destroying all my shit? I was like, I really don't think this is gonna have the effect you want it to have. It's gonna have the opposite effect. It's gonna push her away. And in fact, it does, rightfully so, because he was kind of being a dick. I don't know. It was just funny because I'm like, mental note for if I ever become a dad,
Well, and the crazy thing is, despite the fact that he pushes her away, at the end, he actually sells his soul and gives up his kingdom for her. And you're like, well, yeah, and I think that's actually what good parents do.
Right. I mean, obviously he loves his daughter and he's just saying, he literally says it like 3 times. It's like, I just want what's best for her. But I think there's just, that's not the way to go about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, you're making it worse, guy.
So question for you. Who was your favorite character in this movie? Because there's a lot of very memorable characters throughout.
Another character that really stood out to me, I just did not remember this at all, was what's the seagull's name?
Scuttle.
He literally, if you watch, everything he does is wrong.
I know.
Everything.
Hilarious.
What's a fork? He tries to get a pulse from a foot. He mistakes Eric for a dog. He like everything he does is wrong, except like at the end, he gets the hint that like he has to go wreck the wedding and does appropriately. So he kind of has his, Han Solo heroic moment.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He really stood out to me in a fun way where I was like, as an adult, it's like, I kind of got it. When I was a kid, I just thought he was kind of like stupid.
Yeah.
But it's this great play where he's actually trying to like make himself important and sound really smart to the other characters because they think he knows all about human life.
Yeah.
Like when she rescues Eric and like he's on the beach and she's like, is he alive? And he like opens his eye and he's like, nope, I don't think so.
Yeah. Great character.
I don't know. He stood out to me, and I thought Ursula was pretty wicked. Especially
definitely
when
great villain.
Yeah, at the end, like in a certain way, she's very villainous, but like, Ariel signed a contract at first. I was kind of like, I don't know. If that you kind of got to fulfill your end, right? I mean, I'm not saying that's how Ursula's not being helpful at all. She's being opportunistic, villainous, but not awful. But when she has that moment where she's like, oh, I got to step in myself, I was like, oh, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, you also wrote a contract. Now you are the worst. I was like, you're going to go and kind of mesmerize this guy with a stolen voice and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know.
Just for the sake of being able to get your way. Yeah. It's kind of dirty.
I hated her after that.
Speaking of dirty, I think this is a great segue. Now, you may remember this because I'm assuming you had this yourself at one point.
Oh, yeah. I had all the Disney classics on VHS. So for anyone listening, not watching, Christian is holding up the original plastic cased The Little Mermaid VHS cassette case.
And why is this important? Because this film had a little bit of controversy upon release. And this original case still has the phallic-shaped castle, which is not on the re-released DVD. And actually, watching it on Disney Plus, I noticed that the controversial scenes have been removed.
Oh, I didn't know that. I haven't even checked that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And apparently this was a big piece of controversy in the 90s. I didn't really know or care when I was a kid, but I guess there's a lot of PTA moms that did.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I've kind of seen that YouTube video that was going around at one point, probably like, 10, 15 years ago, where people were like, there's hidden sexual messages in Disney films.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, even at the time, I was like, I mean, I would be hard pressed to believe that all of that was intentional. I'm not saying that nothing could have happened. People have done that. I mean, isn't it a joke in Fight Club when he's like, he puts in like a one frame and everybody's like, ugh. Like, I wouldn't put it past someone somewhere to do that. But I mean, to think that it was this kind of like, under the table secret at Disney where like they got to sneak in sexual references in all the movies. I was like, I doubt it.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure some things are just coincidental, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there was like a one-off somewhere. Was it enough to court controversy? Because I think there was actually a lawsuit over it and some weird stuff related to Little Mermaid. I doubt it.
And I always felt like it was such a reach hearing about it. You're like, I mean, feels like a lot of people who spent way too much time watching these movies over and over and over on their VHS player back in the day.
Yeah, for real. So you asked me who my favorite character was. Who was yours?
It's a good question. Was always a fan of Sebastian. For one, he bests the chef. Two, he's got the awesome, all the best songs are sung by Sebastian. So
that is true. I think one of the cool things that The Little Mermaid also does is, for the most part, not in every instance, they do make Ariel somewhat of an active heroine in her decision making. Where I think when you go back to some of the classics, particularly Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, from what I remember, as I said earlier, a lot
They're
of
very passive.
A lot of things happen to them, but they don't actually make a lot of kind of personal choices. Where Ariel is kind of empowered here, and she does do a lot of
No, you're right. She
cool things.
Disregards her dad and keeps going to the surface. She rescues Eric. She makes the decision to go see Ursula. She signs the contract. Like this is a very active character who is making decisions, which is progressing the story on. So, I mean, in that way, it's great, story.
Yeah, I don't know.
Screenwriting.
I don't know if the Little Mermaid's, winning any feminist points on this character in this story, but I mean, as far as character goes, I found her to be kind of an active hero. She was making a lot of her own decisions and, had problems with certain people, which I thought was fine.
Yeah.
Entertaining.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, yeah, I guess we gotta, ask the question, do you think the Little Mermaid still holds up?
Obviously, as I said, this was not my favorite Disney film when I was a kid, but to think that this movie came out over 30 years ago and you still know the words to the song, I think that's a testament to its stickiness and the fact that it still holds up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the viewing numbers are on Disney Plus. I mean, we just added to it, I think, but there's still, a ride at Disney's California Adventure. I think Ariel's Grotto or whatever, dark ride. You still see Ariel and the characters from the Little Mermaid in the parades, and they're a big part of. I'm sure if you go on a Disney cruise,
yeah, and it's spawned two sequels and a remake. Right, a live action remake will be coming based on this film, which
So, I mean, if you're at, I mean, does it hold up? I think yes. I mean, in the like I said, in the the pantheon of all the great animated films of all time, I think The Little Mermaid has a rightful place on most lists. And there's especially now that we've gotten into that kind of 3D animation, if you go just to that real traditional 2D ink and paint, hand-drawn animation, then 100%.
Yeah.
I think it's a marvel that they were even able to pull it off with making it feel like you're literally underwater, that there's bubbles. They have to animate people's hair differently. Found that interesting. I was like, so yeah, I mean, I think it totally holds up. And then, like you said, the songs are classics.
Yeah.
I mean, for most people, if you put on Under the Sea or Part of This World, they know the lyrics and they most likely are like, oh, Little Mermaid.
Yep. That's the truth, man.
So yeah, I think this movie will be seen by the next generation of kids and the generation after that. And even after that, may it get lost the way that, maybe Snow White has. It's possible, give it another 30 years, maybe. Cause you think about it.
True.
If we were talking today, Little Mermaid is when we were kids, right? But you and I were born in 87. This came out in 89. If we were born in 87, that would mean 57 was 30 years before us. And this movie's over 30 years old at this point. So that would take you back to the original Disney classics, and that's brand new for us. Well, we're, now we're 32 years past that. So I'm like, give it a couple generations. I'm not sure how much, everybody will be checking it out. We'll see if Disney Plus is around in 20 years, but probably. But yeah, I think this is a classic and it totally holds up. So really enjoyed it.
Boom. Well,
is there anything else? Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add? I mean, listen, we've been doing this show for, almost an entire year now, and we haven't hit any animated classics or any of the Disney specifically. So I was kind of excited to get into this. Obviously, maybe a little more so just to be talking Disney classics because I grew up on these, loved them.
Yeah, it was a nice change. And I was thinking about it when we did it. I was like, why haven't we done any animated films of any kind yet? So we'll have to do more because they're fun going back and checking them out.
At least from the Disney Renaissance, because those are the ones I know you and I can talk about. We can quote. We know the songs. Maybe we'll end up doing something fun like a sing along on this podcast.
I don't think we need to do that. I really don't think we do.
Just throwing it out there. Make it a little bit a little bit more interesting. But all right, to our listeners, let us know what you think. Out of all the movies, Disney, non-Disney, do you think Little Mermaid deserves its place, in that list? And do you think it holds up? Be sure to continue the conversation. If there's any kind of favorite scenes, any trivia related to the film. Actually, on that note, if we're talking about our listeners, Danielle actually sent us a message, and she was giving us some trivia about some of the episodes and some of the movies. So we do compile that. We love hearing from you guys, and that's something we might actually do, kind of a little special episode of Filmmakers Compass, where we're going to take a look at some of the comments and feedback we've received. So we love hearing all that stuff. It's great. So thank you. But keep the conversations going. You can find our website at filmmakerscompass.com, and you can find all our social media links and everything there to subscribe to the show. So throw it over to you, CP. Take us out.
Thanks for hanging out and talking about The Little Mermaid with us. It's been a while since I've watched it. Probably has been for you too, but...
Oh, I have one last question.
What?
All right. I just want to know where you're at tech-wise. You said you have Disney Plus. You held up the DVD and the VHS. Which way did you actually watch it?
I watched it on Disney Plus.
Okay. Well, then, Disney, if you're listening, I hope you appreciate that. You got 2 subscribers here. But anyway, I digress. Take us out.
Anyway, thanks for hanging out and watching The Little Mermaid with us, talking about it. I don't know what I'm saying here. The point is, keep watching movies. We're going to see you next week back here.